Stop using church intimidation, control and manipulation. Jezebel and all them spirits fall back, not trying to hear it. Go with Jesus, walk in peace. On your pew can sit that beast that we're fighting in the world. I'm that JC Supergirl, Jesus Christ, belt of truth, arm of God, I'm slaying you. Power of the word to a sword. MC Heaven rocks for her Lord. Thought they crept in unaware, didn't see the gatekeeper standing right there, not getting down with your tactics, undoctrinal practice.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome again to the Crystal Jones Show. It's the show that's all about life's balance. And I am your talk show host, Crystal Jones. I greet you in the name of Ahaya, Bahashem Yeshaya, Warawak Kwadash. Let me tell you how you can tune into my show every Saturday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. on bronxnet.org, your cable channel 951 and 2137, the Inspire channel. Also, you can check me out on Facebook, the Crystal Jones TV show. Also, you can subscribe, like, and share on my YouTube channel. Go to my YouTube channel. Let's grow that channel. Thank you all who have been joining the channel, the Crystal Jones TV show. So go there, like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Also, check me out on Instagram. You can go to the Crystal Jones Show on Instagram and check out the inspirational quotes from the Bible that I have, on there daily and regularly. And also you can check me out on HebrewConnect.tv. All right. Okay, so we are going to start off the show with the word of the Lord. All right. So we're going to go to the book of Matthew in the New Testament, and Matthew chapter 24. All right, we're going to read verse 1 through 14. It says, and Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Of course, this was a prophecy that Jesus was letting them know that someday the temple would be overthrown. And the disciples kind of knew something was up with what he was saying. So in the third verse, it says, and he sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Because he had been telling them that he came to restore the lost tribes of Israel, and that he would be going back to the Father eventually, but that he would come again and receive us unto himself. So they wanted to know, well, what's going to be going on during and between those times? So Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. That's the first thing. Don't be deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. You see many false religions going up. From the time that we've been here under the inception of slavery, of course, they gave us a different version of the Bible altogether to keep us enslaved. So the Lord was telling his disciples, don't you be deceived by this. For many shall come in my name. And what they did, they brought all of these different religions under the guise of Christianity. All right. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. And of course, we're hearing of that today. We're seeing all of these different wars that are going on. See that you be not troubled. Okay. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So we're in the time of the Bible talks about of Jacob's trouble. This is something that the 12 tribes we're going to have to go through. The world is in an upside down thing because you have different powers fighting against each other. One world power is coming down, and Christ's kingdom is on the rise. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines, right? And pestilences. The famines you see every time you turn around, they're coming up with a new sickness all the time. Everything is, sickness this, sickness that, right? So Christ said that would happen. There will be famine, meaning, of course, I'm sorry, with famine, meaning there's going to be food shortages, right? And we're going through the famines now. We're having all of these, they're having shortages of food everywhere. So that's why we're saying grow your own food, get on your terrace. I've been growing my scallions really. They're coming in really good. I'm looking for my mangoes to start coming up. I'm going to listen, we're going to have to make our places where we're at farms, all right? Because this is going to really get worse, and people are not even prepared for the shortages that are going to be coming up. If in your area, if they have what do they call it, each week, a lot of communities have where the farms are bringing foods down to the people. Don't be proud, get out there and get that food. It's free, and you could replant some of those things. I did it with my scallions. Just replant the stuff, start growing it yourself, because it's going to get worse. All right, so there will be famine, pestilences, right? Pestilences where we have all these different swarms of, sometimes we have gnats and flies and all kind of crazy things going on. Earthquakes in different places. Every day I see, if you go online, every day you see earthquakes in different places. Earthquakes like crazy, like at least 6 or 7 on a Richter scale, right? Okay, all these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted. Sometimes these people coming up with these sicknesses and diseases to make money, and people are being fooled, by different things that these people will claim that you have. It says they'll deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you, because it's all about money. The love of money, not money, but the love of money is the root of all evil. People have other plans in mind, right? And you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Are we not hated everywhere we go? From the time when we were back in our homeland, we would run out of there and into the other areas of Africa. And that's how we became what they call the lost tribes, the 12 tribes. We all look different now because we fled to other areas and then eventually were sold into slavery to other countries, right? We shall be hated of all nations for his name's sake, the name of Christ. They hated Christ, okay, because he came and told them the truth, about themselves, about how they needed to come back to the worship of the Lord. They didn't like that. He called out their sin. They couldn't stand that. So we too are going to be hated of all nations for the sake of Christ. All right. So then shall many be offended. You see people now, they get upset and offended over the least, any old kind of thing. They're ready to fight, right? And shall betray one another. Much betrayal is going on. You hear of families killing each other and crazy stuff like that. And shall hate one another, right? And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. All right, when they change Christianity through that Constantinople deception, right? That was to make us docile and think that we were beneath everybody, and that we would never get ahead. We will always be these people that are beneath everybody, right? And then they brought in many other nations to make money off of us in our own neighborhoods. And we weren't aware of that. We were so turned around being brought here. We've had fights and struggles for so long, but now we're awakening to what was going on. They wanted to hide who we were, right? So many false prophets arose, and shall deceive many. They deceived us, right? Okay, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Iniquity, sin, people doing what they want to do, calling right wrong and calling wrong right. One time, I remember when I was in high school, you could sit during the lunch hour and read your Bible. Now they don't want the kids to bring the Bible to school. We used to have gospel choir. You can't do that stuff no more either. They don't want you to sing gospel. They don't want to hear nothing about Christ in these schools, but they will allow so many things to go on in these schools. There was a man the other day, he brought his grandson in because they put a dress on the little boy, and the grandfather was saying, excuse me, we didn't tell you to do that. Why are you doing that? So they're trying to change the way that we're normally used to, how families continue with one man and one woman procreating. And so because they don't want to do it now, they want to bring this to your children. So it's crazy, right? So this is what's going to go on, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. So we have to endure through this, because it's going to get worse. Now that they're allowing all of these different type of things to go on, and even the names that they now want to call us because other people aren't happy. And I still say, I don't want you calling me those names, that because another group of people are unhappy. I think it's offensive to call a woman. I'm still a woman. I want to be called a woman. If you don't want to be called a woman, then don't, right? So he that shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved. Endure this stuff that's going on. Be who you are. Be who God made us to be. You don't have to be ashamed of who you are. If they want to be doing something else or call something else, let them go ahead, but not me. You don't have to go along. So, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. All right. So that's the reading for today. Now I'm going to give my commentary on today's news, the strike that happened in the MTA. What that was over, according to this morning's news, was that they were upset because Juneteenth was proclaimed a national holiday about 2 years ago, was signed by, at that time, the Governor Cuomo. All right. And many places went along with it. Some didn't. So the workers were upset because it wasn't honored there. So they decided, listen, we're tired of this. Juneteenth was was the date that they initially had sent out the proclamation for the slaves to be freed in 1865, but it took 2 years for it to get to everybody. Wonder why that was, right? So it's something that Black people, people of color, deem important. And so when it wasn't recognized, the workers through their union went on strike yesterday. That's why there was no train service. So my thing is, if it was declared a national holiday, why wasn't this directive followed? You know what I'm saying? That's ridiculous. And this is something we continue to go through. Like, just like the interview they had with Dr. King, when they asked him, how come the Black man can't pull himself up by the bootstraps and all that, knowing good and well that when we supposedly came out of the slavery, we were supposed to be given the 40 acres and a mule. That's where that comes from. We were supposed to be given land and cattle, but they didn't do it. What they did was they invited the European nations over and gave them the land, all right, when we built the country. So this is what this was over. And it continues, and is going to continue, because many of these entities are not for what's right. A lot of them, at the helm of them, a lot of times they want to, go against us. So that's what was reported today, that's what it was over. So that's a quick fix. Just do what was, proclaimed through the governor. The governor wrote that, said that It was to be celebrated as a national holiday. It's just that simple. Everywhere else basically did it. So, come on. Stop stop making a problem that is not a problem. So that's what happened. So that's where that came from. All right. So we are now going to move on to our missing persons today. All right. So the first one we have is Jamoya, right? Jamoya Roberts. Let me just make sure I have. Okay. Well, we have Jamoya Roberts. He's been missing since March 27th of 2022. All right. I believe he's a 28-year-old male. I believe he's a 28-year-old male that he was missing from the Wakefield area of, this is him here. I'm sorry. Yes, he's a 29-year-old man. He's been missing from the Wakefield area here in the Bronx. Okay, so he was last seen on March 27th around 8 a.m. leaving his home. All right. He's dark complexion. He's about 6 feet 2 inches tall. All right. He weighs about 190 pounds. He has brown eyes and black hair. All right. Anybody with information, the family is asking that you call 1-800-577-TIPS. All right. So he's a missing person. Please look out. See if you see him. Call that number 1-800-577-TIPS and let Crime Stoppers know so that he can be found. Okay. There's another number also. Well, that's the same number, 8477 at the end. That means TIPS. All right. So that's 1-800-577-TIPS. All right. Okay. Our next missing persons is a mother and daughter duo group. All right. And this was 5 years ago. A mother and daughter were missing. This is a woman and her 8-month-old baby. They vanished after a trip to the beach. So what happened to Kier and Chloe? All right. On April 30th of 2017, this woman was 34 years old, right? Kier Johnson told her mother that she was taking her 8-month-old baby, Chloe, to Buckrow Beach to spend the day with a friend. The beach was only a 4-minute drive from Kier's home in Hastings, on the block of Hastings Drive in Hampton, Virginia. However, Kier and Chloe never arrived. 5 years later, they still remain missing. All right. Now, despite the fact that Kier and Chloe were reported missing the very next day, a search didn't begin right away. Okay. They didn't think that they were in danger. The authorities didn't think that they were in danger. After learning that the mother, who is Kier, she had taken a week from her job at Smithfield Foods, a packing plant. All right. They didn't send out anything until May 11th. See, this is why I report people of color, because no one thinks that we matter. That's crazy a lot of times. Okay. 3 days later, they found Kier's 2013 Kia Optima. It was found abandoned in a trailer park at Jefferson Avenue and Arch Street in Newport News. All right, roughly 10 miles from Buckrow Beach. The trailer park was searched. All right, cadaver dogs were there. Nothing was found, right? So, according to a group called Our Black Girls, she was 4'11" and weighed 140 pounds. She had black hair and brown eyes. All right. She was wearing a t-shirt, blue jeans, and Nike slides. Okay. Chloe weighed roughly 20 pounds, the baby, and both of her ears were pierced. Today, Kier would be 39 years old, while Chloe would be 5. So if you know anything about their disappearance that the family is asking, please call the local police or 888-562-5887. Okay. And so, yes, please, if you know anything about their disappearance as well, please help out. Let the family, call so that the police can, look into it and they could be brought back to their family. All right. The next person we have is Cleshindra Hall, right? 28 years ago. Another one been missing for years. This is even longer than the 5 years that the mother-daughter was missing. A teen vanished from a doctor's office on Mother's Day weekend. Where is Cleshindra Hall? 28 years ago. Okay, according to Find Cleshindra, Clea Hall lived in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, with her parents and 2 younger brothers. She was an honor student and a valedictorian of her class. She had just turned 18 and was only 2 weeks away from graduation. Sadly, she wouldn't make it across the stage. Now, this is ridiculous, right? Described as a bright bookworm who adored children, the aspiring pediatrician already had an internship lined up in Boston and had been accepted into Tennessee State University as a pre-med student. In order to save up money before she took off, Clea worked at the home. I won't say who the person is, but she worked for a man who ran a nonprofit charity that supported in-home daycare centers. Okay, so on May 9th, 1994 at 5 p.m., Laurel Hall dropped Clea off at work for her 3-hour shift, unaware that she would never see her daughter again. According to Laurel, Clea always called her parents for a ride home since she wasn't allowed to walk alone at night. And this day was no different. Clea called home at 8 p.m. She told her mother she wasn't quite done and told her to expect another call at 8:30. While waiting for the call that never came, Laurel fell asleep on the couch. At 12:45 a.m., her husband returned home from work and woke her up. It was at that moment panic began to set in, and the Halls realized that their daughter never made it home. Frantic, they called the doctor, who claimed that Clea had left his place at 8:30. According to him, he said she got into a car that he assumed was her mother's. Laurel and Willie hoped for the best, thinking that perhaps Clea had gone out with friends. They stayed up all night, but by morning her bed was still cold and she didn't show up for school. All right, so this woman has been missing, all of this time. All right, so her disappearance remains unsolved 28 years later. She was 5'8" and 125 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. She was last seen wearing a white blouse with navy blue stripes and matching white shorts with navy blue polka dots, white sneakers, and a white bow in her hair. She has a chipped front tooth and a surgical scar on her left knee. So if you know anything about her disappearance, please contact the local police or 870-543-5111. All right. So that's the missing person. The last one we have is Tajay. All right. I wanted to read that one to you as well about Tajay. She was an artist. All right. That Tajay Baker. Tajay, I believe that's how you pronounce it. And it says an artist vanished during a work trip. 1 month later, her mother received a terrifying call. Tajay lived in Brooklyn, New York with her mother. The 23-year-old art major was in her final semester of college. A talented artist, Tajay sold her artwork online through. All right. On May 1st, 2022 at 3:36 p.m., Tajay boarded a bus to Washington, D.C. She told her mother she had been hired by a woman through Instagram to design some posters. Tajay may have also planned to attend an art convention while in D.C. Her phone was shut off shortly after she got on the bus. Her mother reported her daughter missing when she failed to return home the next day as planned. All right. After that, the trail went cold. Exactly 1 month later, on June 1st, Her mother received a disturbing call from her daughter. She spoke in a whisper and said that she was scared. Tajay told her mother to pick her up at a nail salon in Maryland right away. When her mother arrived, she was nowhere to be found. She was captured on CCTV footage at the nail salon. She paced back and forth nervously as she talked on the phone, likely with her mother. Her mother believed she was lured by a woman, the same individual who supposedly hired her to design posters. All right. So, saying all this to say, be careful, y'all. We're living in some terrible, like Christ said, the scripture that I just read, we're living in some crazy times. People are hateful. They're doing all kind of things. You know, they still with the black people thing and all of that kind of stuff, right? So listen, let people know where you are, for real. Let people know. This lady, come on now, she was a artist and all of that. Now she missing. It doesn't make sense. And the other lady too, you know, she was a pediatrician, going to school for pediatrician. Now she's gone. You know, the other lady that worked at the factory, her and her baby daughter is gone. You know what I'm saying? We have to start sticking together as people, as groups, as communities. We have to give an account for where we are. Let somebody know where you are. Let somebody, meet you somewhere and whatnot. Be careful when you're making these deals with people like Tajay. She thought innocently that she's going to sell, design some flyers and all of that kind of stuff. Maybe sometime you don't need to be going there. Design it and send it to them. Get your money online. You know what I'm saying? Less is more. Less is better. You don't always have to go to these people, especially when you don't know them. You know what I'm saying? Be careful. You go in different places and whatnot. As much as possible, try to, travel in groups or, where there's going to be a lot of people so that if something does go down, somebody is there. You know what I'm saying? So if you know any of these people, it's sad that some of these people have been missing for years. Even if you miss them for a day, Lord have mercy, I can imagine what their families are going through. It's terrible. All right. So now we're going to move on to health and wellness. We've been talking about these natural products for shampoo. Try sea moss. Go get the sea moss. It comes, dried in the package. You can go to different stores that sell them, and you put it in, a pot of water for about 2 days, and it like grows, like it spreads. And then what you could do is put it in the blender. I've done it. Put it in the blender, right? And you can add, if you want it for a drink, you could add a little bit of milk to it, put some cinnamon and nutmeg in there. It makes a good drink. I've been drinking it lately, and it gives you, energy. My skin has been, really glowing with it too. So it's making my skin glow and whatnot, and it helps with hair growth, because you could also put it in the blender and make it as a shampoo or conditioner. So I've used it as all of those things that I'm telling you. I've been trying those things too, and they've really been working. All right. For business tips, do outdoor events like line dancing. Do something different. You know what I mean? For a business thing, you can have a business line dancing party or something. You know what I'm saying? Where people enjoy themselves and come together, and that causes people to talk and share information so that you all can work together, so that's something as well. All right, so we're down to the credo. Shema Yasharallah, Ahaya Alahaya, Ahaya Echad. Okay, I'm sorry. Shema Yasharallah, Ahaya Alahaya Nawa, Ahaya Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, He is one. Deuteronomy 6:4. All right, so we're going back to the lesson, Jacob, Esau and Jacob, So now we're into where they are in Jasher, the 48th chapter, I believe we're on, right? Yeah. And we still talking about Joseph. All right. So we're going into that. So the book of Jasher, of course, is the apocryphal book. I want to get you all used to using the apocryphal books because they have more of the background of like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It really tells the backdrop of the people that lived in those days and time in the Old Testament. So you can go to Play Store and download that for free, right? So okay, so now we're going to the 48th chapter of the book of Jasher. Okay, it says, in those days after the death of Isaac, the Lord commanded and caused a famine upon the whole earth, right? At that time, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was sitting upon his throne. So it's something that now we're up to the chapter about a famine because we're getting ready to go through a famine ourselves, right? But at this time, there's a famine going on. Joseph is now in Egypt. He was sold into Egypt, and he's getting ready to basically be put in a place of power, right? So his grandfather Isaac has died, and his father Jacob and them, they think that Joseph is dead, right? So now a famine comes upon the whole earth. At that time, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was sitting upon his throne in the land of Egypt and lay in his bed and dreamed dreams. And Pharaoh saw in his dream that he was standing by the side of the river of Egypt. And whilst he was standing, he saw and behold, 7 fat fleshed and well favored kine come up out of the river. So he's seeing in his dream, he was standing, he saw 7 fat fleshed kine or calf or, you know, animals coming out of the river. And 7 other kine, lean fleshed and ill favored, came up after them, right? And the 7 ill favored ones swallowed up the well favored ones. And still their appearance was ill as at first. So it appears that there was some healthy cows and then there was some sick looking cows, but the sick looking cows ate up the healthy cows and they still look sick, right? And he awoke and he slept again, and he dreamed a second time, and he saw and behold 7 ears of corn come up, one stalk, rank and good, and 7 thin ears blasted with the east wind sprang up after them, and the thin ears swallowed up the full ones. And Pharaoh woke out of his dream, right? So he's troubled by this dream. First is he's dreaming this of the cows. Then he dreams the same type of thing about the corn, right? So cows represent meat, corn represent what? The vegetables, right? So something's going on. And in the morning, the king remembered his dreams, and his spirit was troubled in him on the account of his dreams. And the king hastened and sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt. Now, listen, to these people believed, Egyptians believed in false gods and idols and things like that. They believed in magic and sorcery. So when he had these dreams, he didn't realize it was from the God of heaven. So he's resorting to magicians of Egypt and the wise men, and they came and stood before Pharaoh. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed dreams, and there is none to interpret them. And they said unto the king, relate thy dreams to thy servants, and let us hear them. So the king related his dreams to them, and they all answered and said with one voice to the king, may the king live forever. And this is the interpretation of thy dreams. The 7 good kind which thou didst see denote 7 daughters that will be born unto thee in the latter days. And the 7 kind which thou sawest come up after them and swallow them up are for a sign that the daughters which will be born unto thee will all die in the lifetime of the king. Now, of course, this was a false interpretation of the prophecy. But with these people dealing with trick magic, witch magic, and all of that kind of stuff, so they don't know what they're talking about. Now, the 10th verse says, and that which thou didst see in the second dream of 7 full good ears of corn coming upon one stalk, this is the interpretation, that thou wilt build unto thyself in the latter days 7 cities throughout the land of Egypt, that which thou sawest of the 7 blasted ears of corn springing up after them and swallowing them up, whilst thou didst behold them with thine eyes, is for a sign that the cities which thou wilt build will all be destroyed in the latter days in the lifetime of the king. And when they spoke these words, the king did not incline his ear to their words. So he knew that they weren't telling the truth. They just talking some mess because they didn't want to get fired, right? So he realized that he didn't give ear to their words, neither did he fix his heart upon them. For the king knew in his wisdom that they did not give a proper interpretation of the dreams. And when they had finished speaking before the king answered them, saying, what is this thing that you have spoken unto me? Surely you have uttered falsehood and spoken lies. Therefore, now give the proper interpretation of my dreams that you may not die. So, in other words, he's saying, I hired you all to be able to interpret these things, but you're giving me some nonsense. So, tell the truth or you die. Now, in the 12th verse, and the king commanded after this, and he sent and called again for other wise men, because this man is troubled by this dream. And they came and stood before the king, and the king related his dreams to them, and they all answered him according to the first interpretation. And the king's anger was kindled, and he was very wroth. He was tired, like, these people lying. And the king said unto them, surely you speak lies and utter falsehood, what you have said. So this is a man that is into witchcraft and all of that, but he knows the devil himself. He knows that. He knows when they telling devilish things, and he knows what the truth is. And the king commanded that a proclamation should be issued throughout the land of Egypt, saying, it is resolved by the king and his great men that any wise man who knoweth and understandeth the interpretation of dreams and will not come this day before the king shall die. Like, if you know the interpretation of this dream and you hold him back, you're going to die. And the man that will declare unto the king the proper interpretation of his dreams, there shall be given unto him all that he will require from the king. So the king is sending out a proclamation throughout the land. Anybody who's wise and knows the interpretation of dreams, if you come and you tell me the dream and the dreams that I've dreamed and it's the proper interpretation, I'll give you your heart's desire. But if you know the interpretation, you don't come forth, you're going to die, right? And all the wise men of the land of Egypt came before the king together with all the magicians and sorcerers that were in Egypt and in Goshen and Ramesses and Tachpanches and Zoar and in all the places on the borders of Egypt. And they all stood before the king. And all the nobles and the princes and the attendants belonging to the king. This man had a whole host of people around him. Came together from all the cities of Egypt, and they all sat before the king. And the king related his dreams before the wise men and the princes, and all that sat before the king were astonished at the vision. They were like, wow, what in the world? And all the wise men who were before the king were greatly divided in their interpretation of his dream. Some of them interpreted them to the king, saying, the 7 good kind of 7 kings, who from the king's issue will be raised over Egypt, and the 7 bad kind are 7 princes who will stand up against them in the latter days and destroy them. And the 7 ears of corn are the 7 great princes belonging to Egypt, who will fall in the hands of the 7 less powerful princes of their enemies in the wars of our Lord the king. And some of them interpret to the king in this manner, saying, the 7 good kind are the strong cities of Egypt, and the 7 bad kind are the 7 nations of the land of Canaan, who will come against the 7 cities of Egypt in the latter days and destroy them. Okay, so, they kept on telling him all of this falseness, right? So I'm going to skip on down. You could read that in your own time because I'm running out of time, right? So the 24th verse says, and the king heard all the words of the wise men of Egypt and their interpretation of his dreams, and none of them pleased the king. The king knew in his wisdom that they did not altogether speak correctly in all these words, for this was from the Lord to frustrate the words of the wise men. This was from the Lord to frustrate the words of the wise men of Egypt, in order that Joseph might go forth from the house of confinement. He was still in jail for no reason, because remember, Potiphar's wife had lied and said that he tried to rape her. And in order that he should become great in Egypt. So the Lord allowed all of this crazy stuff to happen to bring Joseph to power. Joseph is that person that they call Imhotep. All right. It's the same guy. All right. You hear Egyptologists or whatever saying that, right? Imhotep is Joseph. All right. And the king saw that none amongst all the wise men and magicians of Egypt spoke correctly to him. His wrath was kindled and his anger burned in him. He commanded that all the wise men and magicians should go out from before him. They all left out before him in shame and disgrace. And he commanded a proclamation then to be sent out through all of Egypt to slay all the magicians that were in Egypt. So now he's so mad, even though he believed in sorcery and stuff, he's like, kill all the magicians, all of them that were in Egypt, and not one of them should be suffered to live, right? So the captains of the kings rose up, they drew their sword, and they began to kill the magicians of Egypt and the wise men, right? After this, Merah, chief butler to the king, remember the chief butler was in jail with Joseph, and he had promised that once he got free, because Joseph had interpreted his dream, he said, I will tell the king about you and help get you out of here. But when he got restored, he forgot all about him, right? So Merah, the chief butler to the king, came, bowed down before the king, and sat before him. And the butler said unto king, may the king live forever, and his government be exalted in the land. Thou wast angry with thy servant in those days, now 2 years past, and you placed me in the ward, and I was for some time in the ward, I and the chief of the bakers. And there was with us a Hebrew. Okay, so Joseph is a Hebrew. There's a Hebrew servant belonging to the captain of the guard. His name was Joseph, for his master had been angry with him and placed him in the house of confinement, and he attended to us. So Joseph was falsely accused, as many of our men are, and placed in jail. Doesn't that sound very familiar at a place near you, right? So, and in some time after, when we were in ward, in jail, we dreamed dreams one in one night, I and the chief of the bakers. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream, right? So, and we came in the morning and told them to that servant, and he interpreted to us our dreams. Joseph has the gift of interpretation of dreams. To each man according to his dream did he correctly interpret. Joseph is, he's one of our family members. He's from one of the 12 tribes, right? And it came to pass as he interpreted to us, so was the event. So what he told us came to pass. There fell not to the ground any of his words. Nothing Joseph said was wrong. He told us what was going to happen to us. And now, therefore, my Lord and King, do not slay the people of Egypt for naught. Behold, that slave is still confined in the house by the captain of the guard, his master, in the house of confinement. He's still in jail. If it pleaseth the king, let him send for him, that he may come before thee, and he will make known to thee the correct interpretation of the dream which you did dream. And the king heard the words of the chief butler, and the king ordered that the wise men of Egypt should not be slain. Because of this man, he figured, okay, maybe the wise men I'll spare, but the magicians, with all of that witchcraft and sorcery, get rid of them. And the king ordered his servants to bring Joseph before him. And the king said unto them, go to him and do not terrify him, lest he be confused and will not know how to speak properly. Like the wise men, go bring Joseph. Don't terrify him. Don't bother him. Go, the guards and the servants, go get him and make him comfortable, so that when he comes to me, he'll be able to interpret the dream. Don't bother him. And the servants of the king went to Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And the king's servants shaved him, and he changed his prison garment and came before the king. So he started, that was the beginning of that whole new phase of Joseph. He went from the prison to the palace. And the king was sitting upon his royal throne in a princely dress, girt about a golden ephod. So he had this golden big ephod thing on his chest. And the fine gold which was upon it sparkled. and the carbuncle and the ruby and the emerald, together with all the precious stones that were upon the king's head. They dazzled the eye they dazzled the eye. And Joseph wondered greatly at the king. He's looking like, wow, look at this dude. He's decked out. And the throne upon which the king sat was covered with gold and silver and onyx stones, and it had 70 steps. Okay? He had 70 steps going up to his throne. What? And it was their custom throughout the land of Egypt that every man who came to speak to the king, if he was a prince or one that was estimable, in the sight of the king, he ascended to the king's throne as far as the 31st step. Like, you had to be all that and 5 bags of chips to even get to the 31st step. And the king would descend to the 36th step and speak to you. So the king was on step 36, but you was on step 31. Know who's in charge. Okay? If he was one of the common people, he ascended to the 3rd step, and the king would ascend to the 4th step to speak to him, which is a little different, right? So he was right upon you. He was right over you. And their custom was, moreover, that any man who understood to speak in all 70 languages, 70 languages. Remember that at the Tower of Babel, the Lord split the languages. 70 angels came down and confounded the people's understanding of the languages, so that there would be 70 languages, because those people were trying to get up to heaven with their wicked selves. So he ascended the 70 steps and went up and spoke till he reached the king, right? So it said, moreover, that any man who understood to speak in all 70 languages, he ascended the 70 steps and went up and spoke till he reached the king. So if you could speak in those languages, you could go up all the different steps and reach the king. But if not, and you were what they call a commoner, like they considered Joseph to be, because Joseph was a Hebrew. So to them, the Hebrew was the commoner, even though these are black people amongst each other. The Egyptians are black, and so are the Hebrews. But this is an Egyptian king, so this is how he runs things in his area, right? And any man who could not complete the 70, he ascended as many steps as the languages which he knew to speak in. So in those days, our people knew to speak in other languages, because we were surrounded with from other nations. Even though Joseph had came from Canaan, which is today's Israel, they still knew other languages to talk to the people in the surrounding nations, right? So, and it was customary in those days in Egypt that no one should reign over them, but who understood to speak in the 70 languages. So in Egypt, you cannot run for the presidency if you don't know how to speak in the 70 languages. All right? You're not going to be over them. You're not doing that, right? And when Joseph came before the king, he bowed down to the ground before the king, and he ascended to the 3rd step. And the king sat upon the 4th step and spoke with Joseph. And the king said to Joseph, I dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter to interpret it properly. And I commanded this day that all the magicians of Egypt and the wise men thereof should come before me. And I related my dreams to them, and no one has properly interpreted them to me. So now, by now, the king is frustrated that these goofy people have come before him and can't interpret this man's dream, right? So none of them can correctly interpret the dream, right? And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, let Pharaoh relate his dreams that he dreamed. Surely the interpretations belong to God. So Joseph automatically gives God the glory. He says, the interpretation comes from God. Say what you dream, and the interpretation will come from God. See, when you trust in God, he'll make a way, right? So he said, the interpretations belong to God. And Pharaoh related his dreams to Joseph, the dream of the kine and the dream of the ears of corn, and the king left off speaking, right? And Joseph was then clothed with the Spirit of God. See, when you humble yourself and submit, and let the Holy Spirit come on you and let the Holy Spirit work through you. It says he was then clothed with not clothing, not rings, not garments, none of that. He was clothed with the Spirit of God before the king. And he knew all the things that will befall the king from that day forward. Interpretation came. And he knew the proper interpretation of the king's dream. And he spoke before the king. And Joseph found favor in the sight of the king. And the king inclined his ears and his heart, and he heard all the words of Joseph. This king was what do you call, a Gentile king. All right, he was a Gentile he's a Gentile. He's outside of the realm of the Lord God Almighty. They believe in false gods. They believe in idols and all of that. But he had enough sense to listen to a man of God, right? So Joseph said unto the king, do not imagine that they are two dreams, for it is only one dream. Even though he dreamed two dreams, it's all it all has one meaning. Isn't that something? It all had one meaning. For that which God has chosen to do throughout the land, he has shown to the king in his dream. And this is the proper interpretation of that dream. So the king humbled himself. He listened to Joseph. Now Joseph is telling him, the 7 good kine in ears of corn are 7 years. The 7 kine, which are, the animals, the, what do you call, cows or whatever, and the ears of corn are 7 years. The interpretation of that 7 years. And the 7 bad kine and the ears of corn are also 7 years. So you have 7 years and 7 years. Behold, the 7 years that are coming, there will be great plenty throughout the land, like what we about to experience, basically. That's really what it seems like, right? Behold, the 7 years that are coming, there will be a great plenty throughout the land. And after that, the 7 years of famine will follow them. Pay attention, because this is coming to, like I said, I always tell you, it's coming to an area near you, right? Famine will follow them, a very grievous famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten from the land, and the famine will consume the inhabitants of the land. The king dreamed one dream, and the dream was therefore repeated unto Pharaoh, because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now, therefore, I will give thee counsel and deliver thy soul and the souls of the inhabitants of the land from the evil of the famine that thou seek throughout thy kingdom for a man very discreet and wise, who knoweth all the affairs of government, and appoint him to superintend over the land. So he's telling him, I'm giving you counsel. Find somebody who you trust that could be over what I'm about to tell you. And let the man whom you place over Egypt appoint officers under him, and they gather in all the food of the good years. I'm telling you all, get the food together. All right. I'm Joseph's ancestor. I'm telling y'all, get the food together. Get on the terrace. Start. Many of y'all gonna look back on this and say, she told us it was coming, right? You see it. It's coming. You see it on the news. It ain't like I reached up in the sky and grabbed it. It's coming. It's here. All right. So let them okay. So he said, let them lay up corn and deposit it in the appointed stores. Corn. Let's start looking up what corn. Why did Joseph store corn? Maybe we need to grow corn and store corn, because you can make a lot of things out of corn. I'm sure a lot of the Mexicans, which are the tribe of Issachar, they probably could tell us about that. I'm going to talk to some of them so we could start with the corn. I done started gathering other things. Get your pantry together. I done started my pantry a couple of years ago. Y'all got to get with the program. I'm telling you. Lay up corn and deposit it in thy appointed stores, and let them keep that food for the 7 years of famine, that it may be found for thee and thy people in thy whole land, and that thou and thy land be not cut off by the famine. So this corn apparently has some nutritional, principles in it. You can make cornbread. You could make corn cakes. You could corn meal, all kind of different things you can make from corn. But for real, we need to start getting together with people that know about the corn, because there's something with that corn that those people survive. All right. And let them keep that food for 7 years of famine, that it may be found for thee and thy people and thy whole land, and that thou and thy land be not cut off by the famine. Let all the inhabitants of the land be also ordered that they gather in, every man the produce of his field, of all sorts of food, during the 7 good years. All sorts of food, y'all, during the 7 good years, and that they place it in their stores, your storages, that it may be found for them in the days of the famine, and that they may live upon it. We're going to have to make it through this. All right. This is the proper interpretation of thy dream, and this is the counsel given to save thy soul and the souls of all thy subjects. And the king answered and said unto Joseph, who saith and who knoweth that thy words are correct? And he said unto the king, this shall be a sign for thee respecting all my words, that they are true, and that my advice is good for thee. So the king, even though he listened to Joseph, he wants to confirm that what Joseph says is true. Behold, thy wife sitteth this day upon the stool of delivery. He's telling him, this is how you're going to know. I'm telling you, your wife is ready to deliver a child this day. She will bear a son. You will rejoice over him. When the child will have gone forth from his mother's womb, thy firstborn son that has been born these 2 years back shall die. Sadly, he had to tell them, this is what's about to come upon you. Your wife is going to have a baby, but also your other son, he's going to die. And thou will be comforted in the child that will be born unto you this day. So the Lord is sending this child to comfort you, because the other child is going to die. All right. So we're going to pick up next week at, Jasher again, 48 and 63 or 64. All right. So read that chapter, y'all, this week, Jasher 48. Read it and understand that only interpretation of dreams and things like that come from God. God is the one that sends warning and stuff like that. I don't care how much people try to lift themselves up like, well, I knew. No, you didn't. God spoke to you. He let you know. So stop, come on. Anyway, God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. The Crystal Jones Show. Watch me every Saturday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. on bronxnet.org, or your cable channels 951, 2137, the Inspire channel. Also, check me out on YouTube. Join my YouTube channel, The Crystal Jones TV Show. Like and share my YouTube videos, all right? Also, check me out on Instagram. All right, check me out on Instagram at The Crystal Jones Show and HebrewConnect.tv. All right, so God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. Kwam Yasharala Kwam. You all that are Israelites, you know this. You 12 tribes. Come on, y'all. Issachar, all of y'all. Stand up. Tell the people what's going on. We are living in the last days. Christ will soon return to the earth, but we got work to do. All right, Kwam Yasharala Kwam. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. Join us again all the time at the Crystal Jones Show. And I always tell you, you, stay balanced.
Stop using church intimidation, control, and manipulation. Jezebel and all them spirits fall back, not trying to hear it. Go with Jesus, walk in peace. On your pew can sit that beast that we're fighting in the world. I'm that JC Supergirl, Jesus Christ, belt of truth, arm of God, I'm slaying you. Power of the word to a sword. MC Heaven rocks for her Lord. Thought they crept in unaware. Didn't see the gatekeeper standing right there, not getting down with your tactics, undoctrinal.